Hello, thanks so much for joining me. Debs Kay here. Welcome to my little studio this week. Sorry being quiet for a few weeks. Unfortunately, as some of you may know, we've had some technical issues here with computers deciding not to play and giving up the ghost. But thankfully, hopefully, all sorted now, so we should be good to go. So apologies, a little bit late on this one. But this week, as you can see, we're doing this lovely little pretty Bluebell Wood scene. And a bit of a change for me. This week I'm painting on Pastelmat and an Anthracite colour at that. Size is 20 inches by 13 1/3, so a 2x3 format. All right, so let's get painting. So, a bit of a change for me this week. Painting on Pastelmat, not a paper I'm very used to at all. Only painted it on a couple of times, and must admit in the early days didn't really get on with it. I must admit I found my Fisher paper and fell in love with that, and it was so versatile that I kind of stuck with it and haven't sort of come out that little box really. But needs must, as my Fisher paper having problems getting that hold of that over here in Europe at the moment. So I've got some Pastelmat in stock, so I thought, come on, give it a go. Let's have a go and see what you can do with this paper. And as you can see, an anthracite colour. Now, initially, one would think that perhaps a light scene like this wouldn't work so well on a dark paper, but in actual fact, it really helps sort of the darkness of the background sort of all meld in together, and those lovely bluebells to really pop. So it worked well on this painting particularly. Now obviously the first thing you can see me doing is I changed up a little bit. I used a vine charcoal to do my initial sketch of this, and as you can see, very scrappy sketch. Really not worried on this whether the trees are in exactly the same place and I've got exactly the same amount of trees and size and things like that. But I do love the gesture of this photograph, and many thanks to Steve Liddon over on Paint My Photo for sharing it with us. I was out walkies a few weeks ago, and they're gorgeous bluebells, but unfortunately didn't manage to get a good photo, so many thanks to Steve for providing this one for us. And I really enjoyed this photo. I loved all the scrappy trees and the feeling that you were going through this sort of like the bluebell woods with all the pretty dappled light, and really found it very attractive. I'd like to go walkies here, so let's go on a walkies here. So composition wise, I'm keeping it fairly close to the reference photo so that you can follow along. I tend to do that with demos really, so it's easier for you to kind of see what I'm up to and what I'm doing. So keeping it pretty similar. I'm going to lose a few of those branches and a few of the trees and the post at the back. I want to open that back up a little bit so that we can feel as if we can go through there and out into that backfield and those back trees. I've moved the path over to the right just a little bit. I actually did this by accident, but I think it actually worked well. I wanted to give the feeling that I was perhaps a little bit more on the path and sort of crushing all those pretty bluebells. So I've kind of used, composition-wise, taken that path up and sort of done a backwards S sort of composition on it. And so the first thing you're seeing me doing is, first of all, I'm re-establishing, where I've got that charcoal really, get all those darks in place. So first thing I did was come in with that nice, rich, deep dark blue and got some of that foliage in and, where those shadows are and things. And obviously the base of these trees using a nice, deep dark brown. Just again, if you've used charcoal before, you know that it kind of moves around even more so than pastel. So you kind of want to get your pastels in situ at this time. It really will help you because you'll soon lose all of your charcoal marks. So just as well get those in now. And whilst obviously those trees, are lighter in their value, they're a lot more sort of creamy in their colour. At the moment, I'm starting off with just a rich dark brown to start me off so that we can get some depth in them, and then we can add some lights, where the sunshine's hitting them. And so you're going to see me going in between the trees and the sort of foliage in the back there, introducing a couple more dark values, a nice deep dark aubergine and a nice deep rich bottle green. So I'll let you watch these initial darks come together, and I'll see you in a mo. So as you can see, speeded it up just that little bit more as we went through those darks there. And as I say, using a nice rich dark aubergine to add to that blue, and also a bit of bottle green there. Not wearing too much at the moment. As you can see, my touch is really, really light, and keeping it that way at the moment, and keeping it loose and loose and free, really. Just trying to build up that colour, the depth of colour. And you might have noticed I came up the value scale a little bit more with my trees, and started to indicate some of that light that we've got going on there. Obviously, we'll come back in and do more of that later on, but that's enough for the moment, just so that I can keep a sort of like handle on where that light is coming from. And now I've got like a sort of deep dark emerald green. It's it's a value shade up. So I started off up in my trees, just where it's starting to turn. Added a little bit of that, in there. Really just trying to build up these colours, going from dark to light as definitely in the beginning stages of pastel painting. You find it much easier if you do that. Much easier to lighten something than it is to darken something. So now using that lovely green and bringing some of that down into this foreground now, getting a little bit some down on these grasses here. Obviously, we'll get some green on the grasses going. So using that down here, just trying to starting to knit these areas together. We need to be a little bit careful on this painting, because it is obviously you have got some quite high contrast going on with those shadows and things, and we don't want it to feel too spotty. We want to give the idea that there's little clumps of bluebells and things, but not too spotty with very hard contrast. We need to soften those edges. So now I'm coming in with sort of like lovely purple I was using just then, and I'm going between sort of like the purple and the green now. Again, now I've come up a little bit more with the green in the value scale. It's a little bit lighter, introducing a little bit of that, and sort of like just trying to sort out these areas where there's grass. The green's going where the grass is, and the purple's going where the bluebells are in the main, and just trying to sort of like sort out these little patches of light coming through. Now again, I'm not hugely fussed if the shadows aren't in exactly the same place, because obviously these are being cast from overhead, and you don't see what's overhead, so it doesn't matter. However, as I say, I like to try and follow the reference photo fairly closely when you're watching, because it's easier for you to keep along with it. So, but as I say, if they're not in exactly the same place, not a huge problem. But as you can see, again now coming up the value scale that little bit more with this sort of like mauvey blue, and putting that in where those bluebells are. Again, just coming up just that little bit more in value, and each time I come up the value scale a little bit, just try and knit those areas together just a little bit more. As you can see, I'm using the pastel on the side, and as always with me, a very light touch, so that we're seeing these sort of colours sort of gently merge together, and I'm not having sort of very hard, solid areas of colour. As I say, knitting them together, just encouraging them to just gently sort of mix and merge, and then you're seeing all those pretty colours going on. And as we get more colour coming on, that will become even more evident. Okay, so I'll let you sort of watch this sort of like next level of value come together, and then I'll see you in a mo. Introducing those colours there, got some lovely jades going on as well. Really pretty colours starting to merge out. Used a couple of different, as I say, cool greens and a couple of different purples and blues there, and just started to knit that together. And now, you know, as I was going along, I sort of like thought, gosh, you know, that branch has dropped down a little bit too much. I really love that little bright green bush in the front there that's sort of like coming through, and I didn't want that sort of like overhanging branch to be too close to that. So I've decided, you know, I want to move it up the painting a little bit. And as you can see, what I'm just doing is literally just taking a dry paintbrush there, Kitty's paintbrush, and just whizzing out some of that brown that I've got in there, and just moving that tree back up a little bit. Again, at this stage, I'm not worried about it being, you know, scruffy and things. You know, that doesn't matter. And I probably could have, you know, I probably didn't need to take out that bottom, you know, that bottom branch with the paintbrush. I'm that early on in the painting, it probably would have covered. But as I was new to Pastelmat and not really sure, you know, how far I can push it, I thought, well, I'll whiz it out. It's easier. So that's what you're seeing me doing, just whizzing it out, and then just going back in with the, you know, sort of my greens and that I've been using in the foliage there, and just sort of going over those areas just slightly, just to get it back in balance, really. So obviously after I've messed around with that tree a little bit, I mean, it still looks very messy, but I'm not really worried about that. It's in the kind of position that I want it, and I can tidy all that up later. But for the time being, what I'm doing is I'm just going back up into the foliage of those trees a little bit more, just to build them up a little bit more. You know, we've worked on these front grasses a little bit. So I just want to make sure that I've got some depth going on in those trees there. And I tend to sort of hop around the painting, really, you know, just sort of doing areas that I feel, and sort of bringing up areas to sort of match the other areas, if you know. I prefer to work all over the painting rather than, you know, from I've seen some artists like meticulously work to, you know, through to the finish point in sort of inch by inch, you know, one corner through to the next corner. And that's absolutely fine if you want to do that. But I do find that fairly restrictive. And it then becomes very, very difficult not to be a slave to your photo reference. And, you know, you don't get any kind of freedom in that, I find. So I prefer to sort of like hop around the painting and, you know, just do things as I see them, and start to, you know, just pull things forward, soften things back, pull them forward, etc., etc. So that's what I'm doing now, and you're going to see me. I'm going to come up the value scale a little bit more. We'll get a little bit more colour going on in those grasses. Every now and again, you'll see me popping up into that back field. Want to make sure that I want to give the feeling there that there's somewhere for us to go. You know, once we've gone through these bluebells, that there's still somewhere for us to go on this lovely walkies, and we're going into somewhere lovely. So I'm going to have sort of like the idea of a field behind there, just with a few trees in the distance there. So you're going to see me sort of like going between the foliage of the trees and the grasses. Going to come up a little bit more in the value scale in the grasses as well now, or rather in the bluebells and things. And then when we've got that, then I think I'll come up into this sky. But I'll let you watch me sort of go between the foliage and the grasses for a bit, and I'll see you in a mo. So as you can see, put some few lights now in those grasses or those bluebells. Where those bluebells, as you go into the distance there, the sunshine's hitting them, and they're all this lovely pinky colour. So I've got that in. I want to just get a bit of that sky going on because they're similar values. The values of those lightest colour bluebells are similar to that in the sky. The sky's a little bit more turquoisey, but so that it's kind of a little bit cohesive, I'm starting off with one of the sort of more lilac-y blue colours that I use down in the Bluebell Woods, and just starting to knit that sky into those trees there. As always, touch is very, very light, and especially in a painting like this where you've got quite dark foliage near your sky and things, you want your touch really light so that you're just skipping over areas, and as you can see, I'm using my pastel in different ways on the side and in different directions, just so that I'm getting a nice sort of a little bit more a random feel up there, and it's going to be easy for me, as long as my touch is nice and light. It's going to be easy for me to come back and sort of make that feel natural, that the trees are going, the foliage and the sky behind them and things like that. So now you're going to, really see me going in between the foliage and the sky, just building up that colour a little bit more. I'm going to come up the value scale a little bit more in those back trees. Let's get a little bit of light going on in there. And I'm literally working between the two. So I'm constantly sort of knitting them together, but, not merging the colours, but just so that sky and the trees are building up sort of simultaneously to each other. All right, then I'll let you watch this, and I'll see you in a mo. So as you can see, I've been sort of hopping around, sort of building up that colour, and, sort of building up the depth in things, getting all those lovely layers on. Still fairly scruffy at the moment, going to be coming in and doing all of my refining a little bit later. But for the time being, just getting my balance of colours really going on. So what I'm going to be doing next is I'm going to be coming up into these, into the trees here now, back up in again, and I'm going to start adding some light there. Start adding that lovely green going on, and to this front sort of branch that's sort of sticking in the front here. Get a nice little bit of light colour going on in there, and just coming up the value scale a little bit up in that foliage, and building it up a little bit more. And because of the amount of layers that I've used on this painting, it did take me some time, and I'm not going to show you all of the hours that I spent on it. Took me quite a bit of time because I'm obviously experimenting with Pastelmat, which I'm not used to, and it does work slightly differently from the sanded papers. But I did enjoy working on it, which was good. So and I certainly can see some pictures working really well with this paper. So more of those on the way, I'm sure. But as I say, it does take some time to build up, because I do build it up in all of these layers. Now, obviously, you can be a lot more painterly about it, and whilst everything is still fairly loose, I come back and I refine things later on. It basically, however you start off your paint, this is kind of the way to start it off, really. And you can, kind of take it as far as you want to, and put as much detail as you want to. Because I build up in these lots of light layers, it gives you so many options to take it further should you want to. Alternatively, you can just pop a couple of stronger marks in at this point and you've got a very pretty painting. But well, not quite, because you haven't got the trees and things, but hopefully you understand what I'm saying. It's these sort of like these parts at the beginning of a painting, that set you off on the right foot, and it's really down to personal taste and personal choice as to how far you want to take it, how detailed you want to get. I'm in the habit of I do love the detail, as you've probably found out by now. So I enjoy taking a picture through a lot further. But there's certainly a stage in this painting that I really enjoyed it, a little bit later on, not too much far from now. And, it could have quite easily stayed at that point with just a few little harder marks there, and it would have been done. But me being me, I carried on and got a lot of detail in. But I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was great fun playing with my bluebells. But if you want to obviously, see the full-length version of this, where I slow down and obviously talk you through, please do consider coming and joining me over on Patreon. I'd love to see you over there. And obviously I slow the video down, give you a lot more sort of narration as to what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. And, you can paint along with me, hopefully, over there, which would be really nice. It'd be great to see you if you do come and join me. I've got 3 levels over there, starting at just €4 a month. So it'd be great to see you, as I say. Okay, so what we're going to do now, I'm going to start sort of like tidying things up a little bit. I'm going to get some highlights on those trees and things. So I'll let you watch for a while, and I'll see you in a mo. So as you can see, things are starting to come to life now. All those gorgeous colours sort of mixing and melding together. And as you see, each time I go round, it gets that little bit deeper, little bit richer. You saw me there putting some light now on these trees, paying a little bit more attention to the trees, adding, looking at my reference photo, seeing where the light is hitting it. I'm not necessarily looking at the photo, to get the trees in exactly the same place and things, but really concentrating on that light. Because sometimes you get a painting and you see a painting and you like it, but you think, there's something not quite right there. And often that's because someone has not been consistent with their light source and where it's coming from. And so sometimes they'll have light coming from the top, then from the side and things. And on initial looking, you're not quite sure what doesn't feel right about it, and quite often that is the case. So do pay attention as to where your light's coming from, and obviously if you've got a reference photo, you can really look at that for hints as to where that's coming, and hopefully then that will lead you to a more believable painting. So we've kind of got the base of things going on. I think you've got a real good head start there as to see how I sort of created this painting. I'll leave the video running, but I'll speed it up a little bit more, so you can just see it coming together quickly. But hopefully you've got enough to get you going, get you off on painting some bluebell woods. They're an absolute joy to paint, and this painting was great fun. I loved all the detail and love the pretty forest. And I really did enjoy working on the Pastelmat too, which was a surprise, as I say, because I hadn't actually ever worked on that before. Well, I had a couple of times, but I hadn't really gotten on with it. But now, actually I'm thinking there's quite a few pictures that I might like to do with this Pastelmat, so I'm sure it will make a new appearance. Okay, so it just leaves me to say thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate you spending some of your time with me. I hope you've enjoyed the video. I hope you've learned something along the way. Hopefully, if you have, please do give me a thumbs up. I really appreciate it. Or if you haven't already, subscribe to my channel or come join me over on Patreon. Thanks so much. I wish you a lovely week. Hope you get a chance to do some painting. And if you do, happy painting. And so those of you that have hung on till the bitter end, thank you so much once again. I couldn't just go off without saying anything, so thank you so much once again. Here's my final painting, and as I say, do hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks so much for watching. I wish you a lovely week and happy painting.